Hello. Okay, hopefully we've got some sound now. G'day groovers. It's not the usual setting that I have for my mic, but it might be better than the setting I've been using. Hey Emily, how you doing? I am streaming on both of my channels, so anyone that comes over to the Yum Tours channel, if you want to click that, the sound's great, awesome. Maybe that's fixed the problem. If you want to come over to the Smooth Criminal podcast channel of mine, that's where I'll be keeping up with chat because I'll be seeing that chat. Although I think I'm seeing chat actually from Smooth Criminal and also over Yum Tours. So hopefully I can chat to everyone. But if you guys start chatting to each other or you say you can't see someone, it's probably because they're watching it on the other channel, if that makes sense. But very big news today in the Australian true crime world. A case that I have followed with much interest for, 25 years now. Finally, today we got guilty verdicts. Unfortunately, only for 2 of the 3 murder charges, but I'm going to chat a bit about what happened today and why the judge acquitted on the 3rd murder charge. The photo that's currently in my thumbnail and the screen, they're the 2 girls who were victims of Bradley Edwards, who was found guilty today of their murders. On the left is Ciara Glennon and on the right is Jane Ritter. And then Sarah Spiers, who was the 3rd victim, that charge, he was acquitted. But there's a reason behind that. So I just thought I'd go live. Hey, Jane. I agree. So glad he was guilty for 2. And, yes, hopefully there'll be justice for Sarah as well. What a case. Now I'm going to turn my camera on, but I'm just warning everyone, I have been studying all day. And I look like I've been studying all day. I've just finished a University of Tasmania course on understanding dementia, and next week I start a new course, preventing dementia, which is a subject matter I'm pretty passionate about, considering my dad was diagnosed with dementia. He didn't actually reach the stage where dementia debilitated him, so he couldn't function, but I didn't understand it, and this course has been unbelievable. It's a free mass online course. I think the next one's in February, so I thoroughly recommend it if people want to do some study and increase their knowledge in an area that's really relevant, because we're all going to be affected by it in some way. We'll either know someone who's diagnosed with it or we'll be ourselves. So, yeah, so I finished that course today, woohoo, and I was about to head off to yoga. Well, I'm still going to go to yoga, but I thought I'd just go live because this case has been gripping the country. It's the largest ever criminal investigation by police in Australia. It's also one of the most expensive trials ever held in Australia. And, oh, you were, Jane, far out. My sister was living in Western Australia when it was happening, and she was a lawyer and I was practicing law in Adelaide. And I think that's one of the reasons why I really got into it, because, I was already a bit of a true crime buff, but also, Ciara Glennon kind of got my attention big time because she was a lawyer as well, and young, gorgeous girls just going out and having good nights on the town and disappearing and sadly murdered, although Sarah Spiers' body's never been found. But I'm with you, Jane. Justice for Sarah for sure. But, yeah, a huge day today. There's a lot of activity on Twitter and all the true crime forums, because these murders became known as the Claremont killings, and they've pretty much captivated the country for a very long time. Over 3,000 people were interviewed. Do you remember, Jane? Hey, Francesca. Oh, shit, you're a boarder. 5 minutes away. Yeah, so that's too close to home, and how scary for you, like, at that age, for that to be happening. I don't know if you're up for chatting on panel on YouTube or not, but if you ever want to come up and tell your personal experience of it, that would be so cool. Because, it was scary knowing about it, and I was in another state. I was terrified for my sister, But I can't even imagine what it would be like to have been so close. Yeah, too young, 14, 15. That's scary. But yeah, more than happy if you ever feel like coming up on panel, let me know. I'm more than happy to have you on to tell us all what it was like. You can email me. There's an email address in my about section on both of my channels. Hey D90 Bell. So yeah, a bit of a celebration in a way that finally, after all this time, two guilty verdicts. Always happy to come say hello first time. Oh, well, cool. It's good that you're able to, Jane. I mean, you're more than welcome if you want to even pop up now. I've probably got about half an hour for us so we can discuss it. Those of you that don't know this case, it kind of gripped Australia in 1996 and 1997 when three girls vanished after a night out with friends in an affluent suburb of Perth called Claremont, which is why it became known as the Claremont Killings. And today, the piece of shit Bradley Edwards has copped Robert Edwards, two counts of murder with guilty, and one he was acquitted. But we'll go through that in a little bit of detail. The victims were 23-year-old Jane Rimmer, 27-year-old Ciara Glennon, and 18-year-old Sarah Spiers. And she was actually the first of the three girls to vanish. Her body has never been found. But it's been it's just been one of those cases where for a very long time there was no suspect. They had a guy called Lance Williams who was followed for 2 years. Like, he was under surveillance for 2 years. He died, unfortunately, not to know that these guilty verdicts had occurred. But it was pretty horrible. Like, the police just sort of targeted him and focused in on him as the only person of interest, and watched him for 2 years, and they eventually stopped investigating Lance Williams. But I can't even imagine what that poor man's life must have been like. He was actually offering girls lifts home because of what was going on, and was terrified that more girls were going to die. So he was trying to be like a good Samaritan, but that put him in the spotlight, which was pretty sad. Give you 5, you've got to get kids from the bus. Okay, Jane, no worries. Let me know when you're back. And we can certainly do a chat over the weekend when it's a bit more relaxing, because I'm sure your story would be very fascinating. Yes, Perth is a small city and it was horrible, but I mean, it kind of had the whole country gripped. Exactly, Francesca. I was the same. I mean, it's the largest police investigation ever in Australian history. And also, weirdly, Bradley Robert Edwards' trial, one of the most expensive trials ever held in Australia, largely because of the volume of statements and witnesses that they had to go through. Oh, you've actually seen those photos of Brad. Yeah, God, what a creepy piece of shit he is too. So he's age 51. Today's Supreme Court Justice Stephen Hall found Edwards willfully murdered 23-year-old Jane Rimmer and 27-year-old Ciara Glennon. Jane Rimmer was murdered in 1996. Ciara Glennon was the following year. It was really sad. She'd come home for her sister's wedding and was murdered. But he was acquitted of the murder of 18-year-old Sarah Spiers. Her body still hasn't been found. He has maintained his innocence ever since he was arrested, and it was 2016. It felt like it was only like 2 years ago. I remember the day it was announced that he'd been arrested. It was like, yes, they finally got him, because there was just so much mystery about who did it, and the story popped up a lot. Sarah Spiers' family were very prominent in the media, understandably. And so I remember when he was arrested, it was like, oh, happy day. It was 4 years ago. 4 years ago. Now, this trial, one of the reasons it's one of the most expensive trials held in Australia is because it went for 7 months. This was a judge-only trial. There wasn't a jury, so it was on the judge to make the decision. There were over 200 witnesses, and there were a lot of statements and testimonies that were also read out in court. A lot of people were called to give evidence. Some of them did it via video link, some of them in person, but witnesses included Edwards's former wives. Yep, that's wives, former friends, work colleagues. He worked for Telstra. They also called a lot of friends of the murdered women who were with them on the nights that they vanished. A lot of police and a lot of expert scientific and technical witnesses gave evidence as well. Yeah, Corinne Rainey, that's another one that I'm fascinated with, Jane. Very fascinated with that one too. He really did have a thing about Claremont girls. This calms your day, D90 Bell. But yeah, it was such a great day when he was arrested. So today, 4 years later, to have 2 guilty verdicts is pretty awesome. So these 3 murders occurred over a period of 14 months from Australia Day 1996, which was the day Sarah Spiers vanished, up until Ciara Glennon's murder in 1997. Now, their bodies were found, both of them found in really dense bush. They weren't actually buried. They were just dumped in dense bushland. I think from memory, Jane was found about 8 weeks after she went missing, and I think Ciara Glennon was about 4 weeks after. Pretty horrible. I mean, the theory is that he offered these girls a lift home and that's how he got them in the car and took off with them, because there's footage of Jane Rimmer outside the bar nightclub that she was at minutes before she vanished. So for some reason they trusted this guy. I think he kind of looked creepy. He's sort of missing a chin. It's just something. I mean, his younger photos, he kind of might have been an okay-ish looking dude in some photos, but then in other photos he just looks creepy. But I don't know whether I look at them and think he's creepy because I know that he's creepy. But the photos of him sort of from the 90s when he was doing this, he just looked like a relatively okay-looking guy. He didn't look creepy or anything. What else can we chat about? I won't go into the details of how he killed them because they're pretty graphic. And I think we can spare ourselves. I think I kind of want to celebrate the fact that there's been guilty verdicts rather than go back through the horror. But certainly there's a lot of information out there. If you type in Claremont murders into Google, you'll get pages and pages and pages of stuff. Interestingly, DNA, there was only one sample out of all of the samples of evidence that were collected, like tens of thousands of them, and they managed to get DNA from Ciara Glennon's fingernails, and they matched and linked him to the murder. There was no way he could get out of it, pretty much. I think his defense lawyer raised issues about it potentially being contaminated and so on, but it stood up in court. There were also blue polyester fibres that were found on both Jane and Ciara's bodies, and also on the shorts of a 17-year-old girl that he actually admitted to raping in 1995. And they were all blue fibres that matched his Telstra uniform, known as Telstra Navy. That's got its own name, that colour. It was a very naive time. A lot of people hitched and, jumped in cars and so on for rides home. when I first saw a photo of him, I didn't think he looked capable of these crimes. No, not in the earlier photos of him, but then the later ones, he sort of looked wrong. And then I don't know if it's when you know someone's done something horrible, they suddenly look creepy. Like, I don't find Ted Bundy attractive, even in early footage of him, and yet it's sort of universally regarded that he was good looking to be a mass murderer. And I don't know whether I look at him and find him repugnant because of how repugnant he was. I've tried to look at him and go, yeah, I can see it, but I can't. Like, even footage of him around the time that he was killing all of the girls, there was just something, his eyes are too close together. I don't know. The Zac Efron version of him in the Netflix show about him, he's good looking, but I can't really see it. But this guy wouldn't have looked, I mean, I'll get a photo up. Ted Bundy looks like a professor. Let me get a photo up of this guy. I've got so many articles open about this story. But he pretty much was revolting. He owned up to other sex attacks on teenagers, brutal rape, and all of that was presented in court too, including evidence that was provided by the doctors, who examined the victims, which was pretty bad. And he broke into people's houses, and one girl, he broke in and got on top of her on the bed and stuffed a cloth into her mouth. Things like that. It's just repugnant. He ambushed people. He was revolting. The reason there was an acquittal on Sarah Spiers, that murder charge, was because there just wasn't enough evidence to convict. And I've got to say, Justice Hall has done the right thing in that regard, because you don't want this guy to have an opportunity to appeal, and there was irrefutable evidence with the other two. So I think the logic behind him, he has to acquit if there's not enough evidence to convict, but to convict him of murder and there's not enough evidence would be very easy to appeal that. So I think that as sad as it is, that a guilty verdict hasn't been handed down regarding Sarah Spiers, I'm also glad that hopefully he's not going to appeal. But hopefully there will be justice for Sarah Spiers one day. I mean, if they find her body, hopefully they'll be able to link him to her murder as well, and that'll be the end of him. There's some information about the family members of the victims coming to court, which is incredibly sad. A lot of the police that have been involved in these cases were there as well. The Western Australian Police Commissioner, Chris Dawson, was present. There were photos this morning of queues outside the courthouse that went round the corner of the block. In fact, they opened a second courtroom to house people that they, beamed it all in on monitors, but there was obviously fairly limited space. But people have followed this with passion, like the entire time this 7-month trial went on, apart from the COVID scenario. But people have been going to the public gallery. Luckily for Western Australia, the COVID issue hasn't been major, but even during the trial, the public gallery's been pretty much packed. Obviously, COVID-19 and social distancing restricted numbers, and that's why a lot of witnesses also gave evidence on video, because they couldn't actually be present. And he's going to be sentenced for the murders, the rape and an assault at Huntingdale on December the 23rd. So Merry Christmas, you piece of shit. That's really all I've got to say on the matter. Yeah, the rape was disgusting. You saw the judge give the sentencing. You liked his manner. Yeah, I did too. And I'm not seeing a lot of criticism about him acquitting Edwards on the Sarah Spiers charge, because I think everyone's feeling really good that there were 2 guilty verdicts for the other 2 girls. Like, sometimes when you get an acquittal, people go feral online, especially on Twitter, but there's a lot of people well, not admiring, but acknowledging why it was the sensible thing to do. Imagine if he did end up getting convicted and the evidence was really scant and appealed it, and then there were retrials. No, it would just be horrific. I just hope that they find her body, or maybe, even though he's maintained his innocence from the start, maybe he'll have a moment of remorse, doubtful, because he sounds like a revolting human being. But maybe he'll tell them where her body is. Who knows? I think he's going to have a pretty shitty time in prison unless they put him in a prison in another state, because it's such a high-profile case, or cases. But I hope they keep him in Western Australia. And in fact, there probably isn't a prison in the country that he could be put in where people wouldn't know about the Claremont killings, the Claremont murderer. I hope there's prison justice too, Jane. I agree with you. Mark McGowan's been fantastic. I think Western Australia and Tasmania, where I am, have got the two best premiers in the country. In fact, Mark McGowan cracks me up. I loved it when the cruise ships were off the coast of Freo and he's like, "We're not letting you off. Fuck off back to wherever you came from." And he and the Tassie Premier, when Gladys Berejiklian was losing a shit about the borders staying closed, Mark McGowan's line, "Yes, if we're going to listen to someone who let all the passengers off the Ruby Princess about what to do with our borders, go fuck you. Fuck yourself, go fuck yourself." And the Tassie Premier was pretty similar. I found them actually to both be, well, I think they've both done a great job, but I also think they've been quite entertaining. Yeah, the stepdaughter has stuck by him. There's always a family member. The one that gets me is, now I wish I hadn't started saying this sentence because I've completely forgotten her surname. Karen. The dad's Boris and the daughter's Sarah. What's her surname? The gorgeous woman in Melbourne who was murdered by her husband, and his daughter has stood by him. Similar to Ruchek. I mean, it's not, but shit, what's that case? Casuarina will be where he is. I think we'll get justice if they find Sarah's body too. You worked in a jail in Melbourne, Francesca. I used to, when I did criminal law, when I was a criminal barrister, I used to love going to the prison to see my clients. I think he's funny too. The ex-wife is Sarah. No. No, the case of the murder of Karen Rositsky? Boris Rostevsky. Or his name looks like it's Borche, but it's actually pronounced Boris, according to his daughter. But the daughter is Sarah, and she's stood by him and was interviewed on 60 Minutes, I think. But it was just the three of them, and they were this super tight family. And when she was questioned, I think it's pronounced Rasevsky, but when she was interviewed, she said if the shoe was on the other foot, if it was her mother who'd murdered her dad, she would have stood by her mum as well. Admin for the parole board in the remand centre. I used to really like going off to prison. Hi to everyone who's watching on my Yum Tours channel too. I am actually seeing all of the comments. There is the link, or there was the link at the top of the chat to my Smooth Criminal podcast channel too, if you want to subscribe to that. But if you're all, I think I'm getting comments from both. So if there are people that are saying, why is she saying hello, Jane, but I can't see a Jane in chat, it's because you're watching on the channel that Jane isn't watching from. Rostevsky? Yes, I know she does look tortured. Hey, Mark. Hey, how's it doing? Preparing dinner, good lad. How you doing? You hanging in there, Groover? And to Francesca too, and anyone else that's watching or listening in Melbourne. Poor guys. I hope you're all looking after your mental health. I was chatting to a friend about it the other night, and even when we had a cluster in Tassie, we were so far away from it. Like, it was, we were all alert and concerned about it spreading all over the island. But to actually be going through what you guys are going through, we've really got no idea. We can just feel compassion for you and hope that it all ends sooner rather than later and you're all looking after yourselves. Although, mind you, I've got a couple of friends in some of my friends in Melbourne are saying they're loving it and they don't want to return to the real world. All the people on the planet that keep going, I just can't wait for things to get back to normal. It's never going to get back to normal. The new normal is the world that we're all going to be emerging. You're fine. Good, mate. That's good. I kind of thought you would be. You weren't sort of super high on my people to be too worried about list. You're pretty independent, self-sufficient groover. And Francesca, I hope you're hanging in there too. So, yeah, big news today. It was a big day when he was arrested. It's an even bigger day now that Bradley Edwards has been convicted of 2 counts of murder for Ciara Glennon and Jane Rimmer. Unfortunately, though, Sarah Spiers, there was an acquittal, but let's just hope her body is found. Yeah, exactly, Francesca. That's what I mean. I enjoyed it. I enjoyed it when we weren't locked down, but we had to self-isolate and we had pretty strict restrictions. You could do your exercise and you could go to the shops or to a medical appointment, and that was about it. I kind of liked it because, yeah, people. And I like that we don't have any cases in Tassie, but in most places you go to, people are still taking social distancing really seriously. And it's like, thank God, no space invaders. But, yeah, justice today. And I hope that the Spiers family, I know that the acquittal regarding their daughter would be hard to deal with, but I do hope that the guilty verdicts on the other 2 give them some sense of justice. I mean, I think everyone knows that he's responsible for Sarah's murder as well. Exactly, Francesca. It's common. So I hope they get a sense of, what's the word? Peace isn't the right word. You never have peace, but I hope that the guilty verdicts make them feel a little bit vindicated and hope that they don't feel completely bereft. I mean, they would. But I think the judge was very sensitive in providing reasons for the acquittal as well as the convictions. I don't know if Jane would like to pop up for a few minutes and just give us a bit of background on things. On her experience living 5 minutes away in a boarding school, age 14, 15, when these murders were taking place. Or Jane, more than happy to do a live over the weekend and we can just relax and make a cup of tea and have a really good chat. It's entirely up to you. Why a car was in the ocean. Great way to destroy evidence, isn't it? But, yeah, I don't know about that. It's interesting too that he was only arrested 4 years ago. If he'd been arrested back when they were happening, the way DNA evidence hadn't advanced and everything back then, he probably would have walked free. So it's sort of good in a way that it took this long. And it's also good in a way that there's no other sort of murders that are sort of suspected to have been done by him either. I'm not saying that there's not. I haven't really gone through all the cold cases in WA, but I've never, in the articles that I've read, or I can't recall, shouldn't say I never. It's possible there was mention to other murders, but I can't recall any off the top of my head. Whereas usually when there's a mass murderer, there's normally mention of other murders that may have been attributed to them as well. Although, they might be the prime suspect for them. I don't know. Jane may have gone. Jane, I do hope you contact me by email. On my Yum Tours channel, it's definitely in the about section. By email. Hang on, I'm now on Smooth Criminal. Let me just see. Yeah, there's not, but there are links to the website for the podcast, Facebook page, and Twitter. So you can reach me any of those ways, or send me a message through Smooth Criminal Groupies on Facebook if you're a Facebooker. There's also a Smooth Criminal page. But anyway, I'll keep an eye out for you. Or on Yum Tours, there's actually an email address. But I just think, oh, happy day, good riddance, you giant piece of shit. Justice definitely for Ciara Glennon. Jane Ritter as well. Sorry, I'm distracted by Biscuit. I shouldn't go live at the feeding time. Jane Ritter, I said Rema earlier too. I apologise for that. And hopefully a little bit of, not justice, but a little bit of feel-goody happening for the Spiers family too, even though he was acquitted on the murder charge regarding their daughter. But am I buffering? I don't know what's going on. Thanks for dropping in, everyone. Jane, I do hope that you contact me. I'd love to have you up. I've got a bit of time over the weekend. Well, Saturday I'm out of action, but Sunday I've got time if you wanted to have a chat, or we can go, you can jump up one night next week. Let me know. But thanks everyone for hanging out. And I think, hey, Ruth, we do love Biscuit, Francesca. She's the star of the show. Yeah, it's a really good day. Any day there's a guilty verdict, it's got to be a good thing. No Instagram. I can't keep up. Biscuit's got an Instagram page. At Biscuit Boomba. She's got an Instagram page, and I'm hopeless maintaining hers. There's too many social media platforms. I'd really love to end all of them, to be honest. But, I've got a massive community on Facebook. If I deactivate my Facebook profile, the whole group's just going to implode. There's like 15,000 members, so in 2 separate groups. So that would be a bad thing. Really bad thing. But yeah, thanks for hanging out, everyone. Oh, happy day. Just repeating that in Australia's longest police investigation, which was the Claremont murders and the Claremont killings. It gets tagged both ways. Today, 2 guilty verdicts. Bradley Robert Edwards, age 51, you're going down, motherfucker. There were 3 murder charges. The third one, he was acquitted because the body of Sarah Spiers, age 18 at the time of her murder, hasn't been found. But luckily there was enough evidence to get guilty verdicts on the other 2 murder charges and a couple of other pretty hideous charges, a rape charge and a very vicious assault. So it is cause for celebration. This has captivated the country for 25 years. 1996, 1997, the murders were. It's also one of the most expensive trials in Australian legal history. It went for 7 months, judge-only trial. God, imagine if there'd been a jury. They would have put the costs through the roof as well. So, yes, rot in hell, Bradley Robert Edwards. I hope you guys all have a great night. Stay safe. And look forward to seeing you on the YouTubes again very soon. Thanks for hanging out with me, guys. And, finally a little bit of justice for those beautiful young girls. I'm going to pop the photo I've got of the 3 girls is the thumbnail to this video, but unfortunately I couldn't fit all 3 of them in the little thumbnail I'm about to show, unless I can share a screen with it. Hang on. No, probably not. Oh, hang on. I wonder if there's one in that article. Give me a second, guys. Yeah, okay. So we've got a court graphic of Bradley Robert Edwards and his 3 victims. I don't care what anyone says, the acquittal of Sarah Spiers. I think everyone knows he did it. So I'm just going to end by showing this picture. We can easily forget his name because he's a piece of shit. But never forget the names Sarah Spiers, Jane Ritter, Ciara Glennon. And I'll see you guys very soon. And I've just got to apologise. It is Rimmer. I don't know what's wrong with me. Oh. I think it's probably just because I was studying all day groovers. So, yeah, rest in peace, Sarah Spiers, Jane Rimmer, and Ciara Glennon. Night, everybody.